Good morning to those of you joining us on the West Coast, and good afternoon to those of you joining us on the East Coast. Welcome to the Pathways Research and Training Center's April 26th panel discussion with authors of Focal Point 2016, dedicated to Early Psychosis Interventions. I'm John Osowski, Dissemination Manager for Pathways, and I'd like to begin with a few housekeeping announcements. Please see the advice on the slide on the screen now to make the most of your GoToMeeting experience. In particular, please note that during the presentation, all audience members will be muted, but you can send your questions to us, and we do hope that you send them to us via the chat feature. A recording of this webinar will be made available online shortly after the webinar ends, and will be available from the link that you see on the slide below. And we'd like to invite everybody to join us at Pathways RTC by signing up for our monthly RTC updates. We feature links to Pathways resources like this webinar, as well as news and events of interest to the field. You'll receive an invitation to email after the webinar, and we hope that you can accept it. This webinar was made possible through funding from SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, and NIDLR, the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehabilitation Research. We're very grateful to our funders for helping make this possible. And so without any further ado, welcome today's panel discussion with the authors and editors of Focal Point 2016, dedicated to Early Psychosis Interventions. I'll be hosting and moderating today's panel discussion, and I'll give introductions to each of our esteemed panelists in a moment. But first, we'd like to know a little bit more about you, our audience. So I'm going to launch a very quick poll, and hopefully you will be able to let us know a little bit about yourself. And so you'll notice we're just trying to see your background. Are you a young adult with lived experience joining us today? Are you a family member? Are you a clinician or practitioner? Are you a researcher, a policymaker? You can choose all that apply, so you can be more than one of those things. And let's give a few more seconds for voting. It looks like the majority of people have weighed in. Okay, and we're going to have a look at the results. All right, and it looks like 78% of us online today have some relationship to being a clinician or practitioner, followed by researchers. We do have some young adults with us today, so that's great, and policymakers too, and family. So wonderful, we've got a very diverse audience with us today. Okay, so a little bit about Focal Point by way of introduction. This is the RTC's annual research review. This one, all of them are dedicated to youth, young adults, and mental health, and all of them are available online for free. They cover a variety of different topics. Last year was trauma-informed care. We have an issue on education, health and wellness. This one, as you know, covers early psychosis interventions, and I'm really glad that we're joined today by our esteemed panel. So here's the person that's been talking. This is me. I'm John, and I served as the co-editor for this year's edition. And I thought of myself basically as a train conductor. I was just responsible for making sure things happened in the proper amount of time, that we stayed within our page limits, which was so hard because our authors put out so much good content, yet there's only so much room on a page for fitting it. I also worked with our fearless web designer, Nicole Awa, who I really have to give a boatload of thanks to for helping us make the issue as nice as it is. And with that, turn it over to Nick.
Hello all. You can read the slides to or the slide to read about that, but I wanted to share with you something about the article. My name is Nicholas Bouquet. I'm part of the ESA community of researchers, professionals, and peers with lived experience around psychosis. I have found the strength as a person with schizophrenia to pursue dreams beyond past solitary confinements of a shifting reality into an open world held firmly together by consistent and incomparable compassion of my comrades. With the help of the ESA community, we have continually worked to understand and familiarize the complexity of distinct perceptions, often arising as incommunicable realities misinterpreted from moment to moment and seen through narrow lenses, patterned in past preconceptions. These realities are driven outward from our own mind's mirror into manifestations of the solid sensations we perceive as outside of ourselves. Many of the people who have experienced psychosis have found personal truths beyond contextualized shared consciousness, deeply rooted in the individual, but sometimes vastly different than the grossing reality we have discovered from an objective perspective, prescribed as truth by the societal other. In other words, psychosis is like dreaming in a waking world. Being told to wake up isn't always a pleasant thing, but it seems necessary in our survival of belonging. The dilemma of having beliefs or parts of this reality that are set in shadows as dreams while others are awake is that individuals may find themselves hardly able to articulate themselves into recognizable formal thoughts for others to internally process for themselves. This dilemma of an unreciprocated identity is remedied by the community we are building, a community brought to light by the process of an open dialogue that is free of judgment and rigid stigma, one that values the unique quality of each mind's journey, subtle or vast in difference, nonetheless wholly woven together in pursuit of hopefulness in a future filled with love, acceptance, and beauty for all. Together as a fellow member of ESA, I ask that you join us on an adventure of friendship enlightened by the path of dreamers still waking. I do not ask that schizophrenia, bipolar, or psychosis-related experiences be solely examined with a factual cause and effect mentality of wrongs and rights. I simply ask that our humanity be explored through the creative path of compassion. I'm honored to be a part of this panel.
All right, thanks, Nick. That was great. And this year, Nick was a co-author with Nivel Caruso, who helped weave together the voices of ESA's Young Adult Leadership Council into a united voice. And that article appears in our issue this year. And so next, I'd like to introduce Sarah Deal, who co-authored an article with Valerie Alt. Sarah was originally trained as a CBT clinician, clinical orientation during her doctoral training at LaSalle University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. She works at PrEP, Prevention and Recovery in Early Psychosis of Monterey County in California, providing training and coaching to fellow clinicians and staff both within and outside the agency, as well as working with clients and their families. So Sarah, would you please tell us a little bit more about you and your article?
Hi, good morning everybody, and good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. I'm really glad I was able to be here, and I'm really excited to participate in this panel discussion. I think we're all doing really important work here together, and I'm particularly passionate about many of the shifts that we've seen towards treating and thinking about psychosis in terms of interventions and research. Particularly with respect to utilizing interventions such as cognitive behavioral therapy. And I think within the article, and also I'd like to say a little bit more, is that what we've seen shift is how we think about and how we understand psychosis and how we talk about it, both to clients, to family members, and also on a broader scale within the field and the community as well. I think this is something that we're seeing kind of growing and changing within the mental health community, and it's my hope that we can continue to expand this so we can reduce a lot of the stigmas and the old ways of thinking that have followed this population for a long time. Really appreciate being able to be here today and looking forward to talking more and hearing more from everyone.
Great, and thanks, Sarah. And next, I'd like to introduce Marissa Gottlob, who co-authored an article with Sean Rausch this year. Marissa is an occupational therapist for a Portland, Oregon area ESA program and a passionate advocate for occupational therapy in community mental health. So Marissa, I'm going to let you tell us a little more. Hi, Marissa. You may be muted. I'm not sure.
How about now?
All right, there you are.
Excellent. So sensory information isn't something most people think about on a regular basis, and kind of by design, because our brain's job is to scan for new information, not focus every second of the day on whether or not we're wearing shoes. So the goal behind this article was to bring awareness to sensory processing itself, while also highlighting occupational therapy's distinct role in mental health settings. And OT was founded in mental health about 100 years ago and has spread to a lot of other settings, but our focus is consistently on all the ways a person occupies their time and incorporates how the meaning behind those occupations or activities give meaning to a person's life. So one area that OT specializes in is sensory processing, and specifically how that processing can impact day-to-day functioning, such as learning, memory, attention, emotions, energy, all the things that you need to get through the day. So sensory preferences don't necessarily need to be fixed unless they're getting in the way, and they can be used for pretty powerful tools for success. So on the next slide, it shows kind of a snapshot of what sensory processing for people with psychosis tends to look at, which is essentially kind of like a giant glass of ice. When you pour soda in, it takes a lot of sensory info, a lot of soda to fill the glass, but if you pour too fast and too quickly, it'll bubble up at the end and overflow. So essentially by learning what type of sensory input the body may be craving or requesting that you stop giving it, they can be powerful tools to regulate the nervous system and support mood, energy, anxiety, and thinking process.
All right, great, Marissa. Thank you very much for that. And our next panelist is Ryan Melton, who is also a co-editor this year and co-authored an article with Sandra Reese. Ryan is the ESA Center for Excellence Clinical Director and is a trainer, researcher, and consultant in the field of early psychosis. So Ryan, please go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. I'm also very honored to have taken part in being part of Focal Point and being part of this webinar. Welcome everybody, and thank you for your interest in early psychosis work. I think this article will basically discuss probably the most well-researched supported education and employment model that we have in our mental health systems. That's the IPS model, the individual placement and support model of supported employment. It's probably, again, also not only the most researched model, but also one of the most effective models in supporting individuals who have been diagnosed with mental health conditions return or maintain employment. One of the potential challenges with this model as we're starting to integrate it into early psychosis work is that it was originally designed, again, for individuals with more severe and persistent mental illness. So this article kind of explores kind of the cultural modifications that we believe need to happen to make this really kind of a culturally informed model for not only individuals with psychosis, but young adults in general. So it discusses the integration of educational goals, the integration of technology, the integration of the values that young adults may have when working with clinicians around supported employment and support education. And this article was done in collaboration with Dartmouth. As many of you may know, that Dartmouth was the organization or the university involved in creating and ultimately researching IPS. So again, yeah, looking very excited to be here and happy to answer any questions that you may have about the article.
All right. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate that very much. And next we have actually two co-authors here this morning for this year's Data Trends. And Data Trends is a review of a current research article, and we were glad to have contributions from both Andre Pruitt and Shannon Blajewski, and I'll introduce them individually. First, Andre. Andre is a mental health practitioner who provides culture-specific clinical supervision. He is currently in the doctoral program at the School of Social Work and Social Research at Portland State University. His focus is on interventions that address the neurobiological impact of trauma for people experiencing marginalization. So Andre, please tell us more. And Andre, I think you might be muted.
Okay, here we go. I hit the mute button, sorry about that. But anyway, I'd like to say I'm excited about being on this panel as well. And the reason about this article that brought my attention to it was I wanted to look at the implications of culture that influences people accessing services, as well as some of the barriers that may occur working with practitioners, and then to bring awareness to the practitioners about the cultural implications that involve support and accessing services. That's it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Andre. And hopefully we'll hear more about from all of our authors and their articles later on. Next is Shannon. And Shannon is a PhD student as well in the social welfare at the University of Washington School of Social Work and a research assistant with the ESA Center for Excellence at Portland State University. Her research focuses on the social ecological aspects of recovering from early psychosis and schizophrenia. So Shannon, if you would, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi everybody. So Andre and I ended up working together to synthesize existing research on family experiences, the Cairns, Reed, and Murray article that we've referenced here, and the results of the duration of untreated psychosis study when the review committee for Focal Point found both of our articles to be covering similar ground. Just really briefly, those of us at the ESA Center for Excellence at Portland State, we wanted to explore the social experiences between first symptoms of psychosis and first treatment in order to build a model of what this process looks like. And it was really important to the ESA Center for Excellence to investigate what was happening locally, as national data trends for accessing care might not be the same for Oregon. And so one of our most interesting findings was that the simple presence of significant others and those such as family and their interpretation of symptoms contributed the most to catapulting young adults toward treatment, but this is not without complex factors, as Andre and I's article explains. So we really felt like that intermediary was a really, family and significant others serving as an intermediary between first symptom and first treatment was really compelling, so we tried to capture that here in this article, and I'd be happy to answer more questions about that later on in our webinar. Thank you.
Great, thanks Shannon. And last but certainly not least, I'm joined here today with Tamara Sale. Tamara was also a co-editor this year, and she wrote the introduction to this issue. She is the director for the ESA Center of Excellence at Portland State University, and I'll let Tamara tell you the rest.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This has been a really exciting and challenging experience for us all. There are certainly topics which we have not been able to include that we would consider to be core areas of focus, but the authors who've participated really have a wealth of knowledge and perspective that I think will make an important contribution to the field. I just want to mention a few of the articles that we don't have represented today. The Australians are sleeping right now, so they couldn't join us. I think it's 3 in the morning there. So we have a really nice kind of international overview by Patrick McGorry and his group. We also have a good national overview from the folks at NIMH, and an article from one of the national leaders on fidelity and evaluation named Donald Addington. And then a very powerful article by a couple of family members about their experience that really touches on the significance and the just the kind of the deep importance of the work that we're doing. So there are many questions that people have, and I want to really emphasize that there are also many opportunities to learn. We did a webinar earlier this year, which was a good introductory webinar and had links to quite a few resources, including PEPNet. So I encourage everyone to to join PEPNet, which is the very first early psychosis organization in the United States. And so that's a place where we're all coming together to collaborate.
And how can people join PEPNet?
PEPNet has a website, so it's PEPPNET, and it's at Stanford. And we can send out a link to that to everyone who's participating. I believe we have everyone's emails, right?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
We do. And also with the webinar archives, we can include a resource sheet, so I'll make sure that that's in there too.
Great, yeah, so we'll include a link to PEPNet. And then there are also some really great learning portals such as the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors has tried to compile a bunch of different resources. And then on our website, we're in the process of putting together a national toolkit, which basically pulls together a whole range of different resources. We also have a national learning collaborative that we've just launched, and we have kind of 15 core states that are participating that represent just about every level of expertise out there, every model that's out there, and we've identified a core set of kind of common interests across the group. So we'll be doing a series of webinars that'll include a series on differential diagnosis and engagement, a series on cognitive behavioral therapy, and then we'll also be having conversations focused on sustainability, fidelity, outcomes, and then looking at the other questions that people have been raising to try to bring targeted conversations and written materials to folks. And we're subcontracting as well with the Stanford folks who are helping to facilitate PEPNet. So they're actively involved in helping us with that effort.
Great. And I guess we can include information in our resource sheet about how to access those resources as well.
So we'll include all that information.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, Tamara, thank you, and thank you for all that those additional resources for our audience. I did definitely want to open things up to questions, because that's what the bulk of this webinar is dedicated to, are your questions. And our first question from the audience, I think, is really directed towards Andre and Shannon, and of course the other panelists may join in. How can families be supported as they come to understand the symptoms being experienced by young people in their families? So,
repeat that question, please.
sure. How can families be supported as they come to understand the symptoms being experienced by young people? And the other panelists can join in too if there's a.
Well, this is Shannon. Andre, I was waiting to see if you wanted to go first, but feel free to jump in. I think that that's actually a really excellent question. I think that first off, we need to really do more studies and find out more about where family members do get support when they are in these early processes of coming to terms with psychosis within their family. We definitely in our study found family members to want more support, and they were very grateful for the early support they received from the ESIP program, but there's definitely a period of time where, you know, support is not coming from anyone besides, say, friends, family, you know, informal supports, and possibly groups such as NAMI, who are designed to be there when families need information and someone to chat with. But I certainly think that this is a really important area to look at more, since we're finding family to be such an important part of facilitating folks toward treatment.
Yeah.
Along with that, this is Andre. Along with that is looking at some of the systems within the area where the families are that support them, and looking at different kinds of care facilities, not care facilities, but more like social support, medical support, looking at the religious support, and what the makeup of the family is, and what are some of the things they can do around involving extended family members, involving different forms of religious, spiritual support depending on their cultural background, and look at how that fits in together, as well as looking at some of the symptomology that may be occurring.
And this is Tamara. I mean, family support is a core element of virtually every early psychosis program. It's certainly a core element of the national model that goes by the name of coordinated specialty care. And so there are a number of different elements of that. One is trying to be there as early as possible so that folks in the community are helping facilitate people getting into care. The second is engaging with people very proactively. So one of the things that we do differently is that we don't expect that everybody is going to be ready to just jump into treatment. We're willing to speak with families. We problem solve with families even before the person is willing to seek treatment themselves, which is quite different than what is typically done in the mental health system right now. We view families as core partners every step of the way, so that includes providing a lot of education to them about what they're experiencing, giving them opportunities to meet other families, other folks who have been down this path before, so that they can both gain specific tools around, how do you communicate with someone who's experiencing psychosis? What is psychosis? And also, maintaining that sense of hopefulness. So the core thing really is about partnering and not doing it on your own, because no family can do this by themselves. No individual can do this by themselves. And what we found within ESA is the feedback that we've gotten from families is just what Andre was saying about, it's important to it's important to help people find support as quickly as possible in those early stages, number one. And number two, we have to look at what the long-term supports are for families and individuals after they've left these programs, because so many of them are short-term programs.
Okay. Great. Well, we definitely...
Andre again.
Oh, sorry, Andre. Go ahead.
One other thing is also is focusing on the normalcy of it and normalizing the experience, and to really hook families up with other families as well who are also experiencing this, to create a support network that is outside of the medical facility as well. Okay, I think that's important.
Okay, great. So as I mentioned before, the question board is lighting up a little bit here, so I want to move on to another one. What kinds of lessons have been learned in outreach in trying to engage young people in treatment who have no prior exposure to treatment? Any outreach lessons?
Well, this is Nicholas, and I've learned that outreach is as good as ESA is, and as good as the hospital is, and as good as all of any facility is. Outreach is more than just your professional job. It comes down to who you are outside in the community. And so I've met a lot of people who have been experiencing psychosis even at my coffee shop, and I've introduced them to ESA, and I've made sure that they know that there's resources out there. I think it's important that you go beyond your call of duty, perhaps, and really, if you notice someone that's having trouble or having hard times, that you know that there are entities out there like ESA, like LifeWorks, like Cascadia Behavioral Health. There are programs out there that can be utilized, and I think outreach just is about opening up your I guess heart. Opening up your heart and just noticing that people need help out there, and you're willing to direct them to the community and or entities based in the community that are full of research and full of resources.
I think also the onset of psychosis is typically gradual, so the more we can do to partner with the mental health first aid folks and everyone who's getting the word out in the community to educate about what those early signs look like as the illness progresses, the more we can get to people before they arrive in the hospital or in the emergency room, the less trauma, the lower the doses of medicine, the more likely that they'll actually want to participate. You know, and the more likely they'll still be in school or kind of on their normal life path. So, you know, there are lots of lessons learned around that. I mean, one thing is also that the community education piece of these programs is absolutely central. That if you don't have a robust community education effort, you're going to have folks really taking a long time to get into services. Our young adults have really prioritized the importance of high school education to high school students. So I find that very interesting, that it seems like that's the one universal as we talk to young adults, is that they keep telling us you need to get into high school education classes more.
Great. And I just wanted to reassure everyone, because our question board is lighting up pretty well, that if we don't get to your question exactly at this stage of the webinar, we do have a way to follow up with you, and we'll do it via email after. So our next question, maybe one for Marissa. What kind of assistance can OT service providers give to young people struggling with symptoms?
Oh man, that's like I have a weekend seminar on that part. Everything, essentially. The OT lens looks at what we often refer to as like the PEO. So the person themselves, the skills and challenges that they have, the environment, whether it's the cultural, physical environment, and the activity itself. So one example that I use a lot is T-Rex, and this meme that talks about him with his tiny little arms giving him long-handled reachers. He's unstoppable. So the idea being that it's not T-Rex's fault or problem that the world just isn't really matched to his needs. So in terms of school settings or working with either the primary clinician, the psychiatrist, to kind of figure out what is the best fit for them. So whether that's IEP recommendations or finding a good fit for a job, we kind of recommended in the article. And also things of just like how to spend your time. So for a lot of people, if they're not wanting to leave the house, they're not really getting enjoyment out of the things that used to be enjoyable, kind of working on the basics of what do you do when you get up? What's your reason for getting out of bed in the morning? And sometimes it's just starting there because there isn't really a reason. So figuring out kind of the routine of the day and how to feel productive and kind of efficient and building off of that. That's, I guess, a snippet of the OT role. And also, I guess, too, thinking in terms of sensory, since CBT is a huge component of ESA, making sure that the sensory piece is included in that. If the body's kind of always in that flight or fright response because of the sensory processing, doing things like higher level thinking and cognitive skills aren't really going to get very far. So making sure that the person's able to kind of self-regulate before diving into the heavy-duty cognitive processing.
And I just wanted to add to Marissa's piece that I actually had Marissa for a session during my psychosis recovery phase. And alongside all of that, it was her personality and her really hopefulness and cheery mentality for us to get better and for us to get back into the community that really helped us tremendously. It was her as a person, as an OT. And I've noticed that among like so many OTs that I've had with Christina or Daisha. I won't name their last names just for sake of privacy, but it has been their personality, and they're not harsh or they're not cold. They're very warm, and they respect us, and it's just been like a two-way street of care for each other. And I really appreciate you, Marissa, for all that you've done as an OT and as a person.
Thank you, Nick. That's so nice. I'm excited for your future in OT.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You want to tell folks your plans?
Oh, so I plan to go to Pacific University to pursue OT myself, and I'm pretty excited for this opportunity. It's once in a lifetime.
Great. All right, so move on to our next question. What are some best practices for working with young adults who are unable to gain insight that they have been diagnosed with a psychiatric disorder?
Maybe a good one for Sarah.
Yeah, Sarah, do you think
Yeah.
that's...
Hi, this is Sarah. Yeah, I'm really glad that question was asked because this is something that has come up as working with other agencies and other clinicians who are practicing CBT, and this question of what do I do if my client doesn't have insight into the fact that they're ill. And there are so many ways that you can continue to work with somebody and address goals with them and address the distress that they have around their symptoms without necessarily getting to a certain point of insight. And there's certainly times when we do see there's a gradual progression where there is more and more insight gained over time. But I think that, and this is kind of part of the article too, where we talk about the collaboration between the clinician and the client. And really it's a team effort to try to both increase understanding, which is part of that insight piece, but to also help the person feel safe and help the person find ways to cope with their distress. And that's sort of what we target. And we don't necessarily, our goal of therapy isn't always necessarily to have insight into their unusual beliefs or why they're having their symptoms that they're having. It's to help them improve their functioning and help them find ways to get back into the community and to get back into doing things that are important to them. And so I think this is something that comes up a lot, and this is part of that shift that I've seen with working with providers, but also in how we think about psychosis in general, is that for a long time the emphasis was placed on having insight into having an illness, and there's so many other ways for a person to make progress in recovery without necessarily achieving 100% insight into their symptoms.
Great. All right. Anyone else want to add to that, or
Ryan and I?
Yeah, maybe Ryan?
No, I don't know if I've had much more to add than what Sarah did, but I think her initial perception is right on, and I think it is a shift for us as mental health professionals to not have the goal be insight, that the goal really is what the client's goal is. And really kind of focus more on the outcome versus gaining insight. We've seen time and time, again, with the individuals that we've worked with in ESA, that although they may never have gained insight from a psychiatric definition of insight, they were still able to pursue their goals. And I think how we sometimes think about insight is it really just means that the individual doesn't agree with us, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can't pursue whatever goals are. So I think the encouragement which comes out of the practices of CBT and IPS and other some of the evidence-based practices is functional outcomes, and insight isn't always necessary for that.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Ryan. And we may be coming back to you in just a second, but first we have another question. What role do you feel churches and other faith communities can play in supporting and prevention of early psychosis? What advice do you have for pastors or ideas for congregations?
I can say that church was phenomenal when I was going back into the community in the very beginning from outside of the hospital. I don't know why it played such a big comforting role in my life, but it definitely did, and I encourage any sort of community. It doesn't have to be a church, but a church is definitely a strong community that will take you in regardless of where you've been. It's sort of that culture of forgiveness of where you've been in your past and looking forward, moving forward, just like any doctor would say, we got to move forward. And so I think that mentality really helped me in the beginning. Just they looked at me, they saw that I had troubles in the past, and they were just willing to move forward with me. And I think pastors, any pastor that is just able to to not only forgive but have compassion again for the person and not look at them. I think it's important to not look at them just from one angle, and so spirituality is definitely part of the puzzle or the of the person for some people, and it was for me.
And we've seen many churches do mental health first aid training for their congregations. We have often they'll do a set aside a Sunday and talk about the experience of mental illness, and what happens is that people start sharing their situations that they haven't really talked about in the past. We definitely know that that kind of social network is a really, really important component of how people do, and it's certainly an important part of people's sense of identity. So I think the primary thing is just really educating everybody in the congregation about how common mental illness is, what the signs are, how to get help, and then encouraging a really tolerant and accepting environment where everyone has an important role to play.
I think one of the powerful things that the churches do is take the stigma out of mental health, the symptomology, and to look at the human piece of the person and to really push onto their goals and their life and how they're valuable. And I think move away from the medical perception of it, and I think that's what's important. Understanding the history and the symptomology is very important for the church as well as the minister, but also to remember the human piece of it and to really look at the goals the person wants in their life and how to support those goals.
Thank you, Andre. Does anyone else want to chime into that?
Yeah, this is Shannon. I just wanted to underscore everything that Tamara and Andre just said, and I think too the very nature of just staying engaged with someone when they're not sure what's happening and they're not sure maybe what they're planning to do next. I think we've all seen situations where someone who wasn't engaged with anyone in their life was struggling with symptoms, and it led to very bad circumstances. So I think in the way that churches can be that supportive human role for someone, just staying engaged and using some of the principles of mental health first aid, as Tamara said, to help somebody as they're navigating their path, I think is really important.
Great. And in all the excitement, I actually did forget to advance the slides to your questions answered. And I'm noticing that maybe some folks have some questions about where to get focal point, and the link to that does appear on the screen now. And with that, we'll turn to the next question. How can IPS help young people with symptoms to get connected to careers and jobs they hope to have? Probably a Ryan question.
Well, it could be an everybody question. It's a very broad question, but since it was specifically directed at IPS, I mean, I think one of the most effective standpoints from the IPS supported employment model is the principles around, the model, which is very much the goals are client-centered, that we don't, discriminate on helping people move forward towards their goals, regardless of how maybe symptomatic we perceive them to be, or whether or not they're using illicit substances or things like that. So it very much the principles guide us to be very much individually focused. Other principles with IPS that are going to help people is the outreach that the clinicians working in those models do in terms of reaching out to employers, trying to learn about employers in the community that might be a good fit for the individuals that they're working with, reaching out to educational systems, learning about those educational systems to understand, what supports those systems have in place, as well as what the focus of study is, and then tying it back to individual goals. One of the recommendations that I had in the article that's a slight modification to the original IPS model was actually doing more kind of career-related assessments like values inventories, personal inventory, or personality inventories, things of that nature to really help people understand what the world of work looks like when they have limited experience with the world of work, which we do see with young people that don't have that experience. And without that assessment, then we might be limited to what we as clinicians already know. So adding that to an IPS model actually helps us identify what we don't know, and actually helps identify what the participant may not know in terms of interests. So those are just in some ways that it could be helpful.
I'd also just like to add that there's a shift in the assumptions around what matters in the support that we provide. When we first started the AZA program back in 2001, it was unusual for people to be offered vocational support when they walked through the door. And in the early psychosis programs, one of the fundamental shifts is that vocational educational support is central. As central as mental health counseling from day one.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to that. It is so central because they even hooked me up with a job directly, and it wasn't part of their responsibility to do so. But one of the ESA clinicians just said, "I have a sister who works at Beaverton Farmers Market. You can have a job if you apply, and I'll hook you up with that job." And that was phenomenal. They took me in and they hooked me up with a job, and that's what I needed at the time. And I think it's awesome for people to go outside of their responsibilities again and just do what's right for a person. They didn't have to do any of that, but vocational therapy helped and tremendously. And just wanted to add to that, Tamara.
Thanks. Okay, we just need to revisit one point of clarification. I think this is probably for Marissa. The OT mentioned an acronym which included E as a reference to the environment and perhaps 3 other factors. Could you please repeat that? And you might be muted. Are you there, Marissa? Okay, and I think maybe Marissa's having a little difficulty with her connection. We'll try to get back to her. Here's another question that's come in. What kinds of supports are provided by peers who have experienced early psychosis? Oh, is Marissa with us? Hello, Marissa? No, not quite.
That, for me, I think my audio is just blanking out.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to be, my audio keeps cutting out.
We can hear you now.
Yep, I think you're good. Did you want to take on the acronym clarification? No. Or maybe not. Okay.
Can't hear
Marissa, we'll get back to you. So what kinds of supports are provided by...
Sorry.
All right, one more try, Marissa, about clarifying that acronym.
Okay. Oh, the PEO?
Yeah, there was an acronym you mentioned that had environment in it and 3 other factors. Anyway, Marissa, I'm really sorry you're having audio difficulties right now. We'll try to answer that one via email. We'll just move on to the peer support.
No.
Yeah, what kinds of supports are provided by peers who have experienced early psychosis?
So, I think that this is an evolving field right now. A lot of the research associated with early psychosis did not integrate peer support. So a lot of the early psychosis programs are kind of new to including it. But many programs do include peer support, and we're coming to understand that just like with vocational support, peer support really is a core component. So the people are doing kind of a range of things, including supporting the engagement process, helping with strengths assessments, helping with re-engaging people with the community, supporting kind of shared decision making, providing education, and then also we're working towards having a variety of participatory decision-making options, including young adult councils, participation on various committees, etc. So that the peer support specialists often are the folks who help to engage people in those kinds of decision-making processes as well. I don't know if there are other things that folks would want to add to that.
Well, I just wanted to add that I'm so thankful that the culture is changing, and I can probably speak on behalf of the council that I'm on with about 12 different peers, and we meet every month and we talk about things that are important to us regarding ESA and the psychosis community. And if it weren't for the people like Tamara and John and the people at RRI and the rest, Ryan and Marissa and the rest of the people who are actually listening to the peers and hearing what we have to say, I mean that's huge to actually have ears wide open, and we have ears wide open for all of you as well. And I think it's a teamwork that we're forming, and this is something that's new and exciting and exhilarating almost, because I think we have a lot to learn from each other, and I still have a lot more to learn from you all. And thank you for this opportunity.
Also, some of the programs nationally are integrating family peer support, and NAMI often plays a really important role through their family-to-family classes and other direct opportunities to be involved in that kind of a community.
It's too bad Nabel couldn't be here. She has a lot to say. Nabel's one of the co-authors of our focal point article.
Okay, so the next question is about the process of shared decision making and in promoting recovery. And I know that was actually one of the things that we wanted to have more room for in this issue to talk about. So I don't know, Tamara, would you be wanting to address shared decision making?
Sure. So, again, it's really a critical aspect of early psychosis work, and there are a variety of kind of structured methods that have been developed, and there's actually some material that the National Association of State Mental Health Program Directors is about to come out with a medication option grid and some other materials. Also, On Track New York and On Track USA in particular has a number of really good decision-making tools that you can just kind of pull off of the internet. I think part of it is having a core philosophy that you're trying to develop shared explanatory model. You're trying to make decisions in partnership and trying to make that real. And then beyond that, trying to use tools that specifically support that. So, like in the multifamily psychoeducation process, there's a structured problem-solving process that facilitates shared decision making, and there are a number of other kind of pros and cons kinds of documents where you can elicit both the individual, the professional, and the family member perspectives, because all of those matter. I wonder if Sarah might have something to add to that. So I know that's a big element of CBT.
I'm just thinking about this too, because it is a more of a collaborative approach, and it's getting the expertise of the young person involved as well. And I think a challenge is including the family and kind of having everybody in on the same page. And so that's kind of where, I definitely feel like this reminds me a lot of the work that we do in CBT, where we do a lot of structure. A part of it is psychoeducation, but it's also, like you were saying, Tamara, the explanatory models and how things happen, making the connections. A lot of that can be done while doing the cognitive behavioral therapy. And then it's finding a way to incorporate other aspects of the person's life, such as their family and their other support network, in to help them further down the road with their recovery.
Great. I'm going to give Marissa one more try. I think she's just rejoined us.
I'm here, yes.
We're here, excellent. Okay.
Yes.
Want to take on that acronym description?
Oh, yes, so PEO, person, environment, occupation. So one of the big pieces of OT is just kind of breaking everything down into tiny pieces, like activity analysis. So every atom of an activity, being able to break that apart so that we're able to modify it. So thinking about a game of Uno. For the person aspect, we're thinking about like memory, attention, and also physical aspects of, are they able to hold the cards? Is there something underlying developmentally that's preventing them to do the physical things that they need to do? Vision, and going around playing Uno, just thinking about the environment itself. So are we in a coffee shop? Are we in a stark white room? Are we in the park? Just taking into account how all of those aspects can either contribute to or get in the way of being able to play Uno. And then Uno, like the activity itself. So breaking that down into, if the traditional way is too much, it's not the just right fit for the person, modifying it in the moment so that that person has more of a successful interaction with that game. So whether it's changing the rules or using a different deck of cards that just colors, or doing just numbers, or doing just 2 people instead of a group of 8, being able to track all the rules. That's kind of a general example of the PEO type of model.
Wonderful. Thanks, Marissa. I'm glad you could rejoin us.
Yes, thank you.
Technical problems will just seem to be part of life. All right, so the next question we have is regarding the IPS model. Can supported education be done? Do CSC models separate these 2 functions?
Our recommendation, and one of the recommendations that I put into the article in collaboration with Dartmouth, is that supported education definitely be integrated into the models, particularly when working with young adults who are in that very much that transitional identity phase. So yes, absolutely. And in Oregon now, we actually even have a modifier, a code that you can build specifically for supported education, which allows it to be even more cleanly integrated into the overall IPS model. It will kind of vary from community to community in terms of whether or not those functions, someone who does supported education and supported employment, where those functions are completely separate into 2 separate roles, 2 separate people. Some people argue for that specifically, while others, kind of depending on your kind of mental health culture and your size, may be more advocate for that those roles be combined, but yet the skills certainly would be different. Okay.
All right. Do others have anything to add to that, or?
Well, I would just say that, you know, when we've looked at our data, what we found is that very few people actually have any work experience coming in. So, you know, one of our goals is for people to get some work experience, but often it's a summer job or even an internship or volunteer job, which is not necessarily the way IPS normally would approach it, and simultaneously looking at what kind of education is going to actually help you to pay the bills down the road.
Okay. And I'm noticing that we're heading up against the 11 o'clock hour, and we do try to end on time. And I just wanted to let you folks know that the recording of this webinar will be available online at the Pathways website. That's pathwaysrtc.pdx.edu. And that'll be available shortly, probably as early as this afternoon here on the West Coast at least. But I wanted to end with one question that came in that seems apropos to end with, and let's all chime in as we can. What areas of early psychosis experience need to be the focus of future research? What are the future priorities here? Anyone?
Well, I think we need to really focus in on long-term supports around career development. I see that as a major priority. We have a lot of 2-year programs out there and not a lot of long-term transitional supports. And I think we really have to look beyond our limitations as we move into this work.
This is
Yeah.
Sarah. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I was just going to say that what I'm hearing that question and what I think about, and particularly with interventions and like cognitive behavioral therapy, I'm thinking more cultural relevant factors, so how to tie all those important pieces into the treatment, and also our approach in general, but I think that I would like to see more of a direction towards that.
This is Shannon. Following up on what Tamara just said, I think that, and something that Ryan mentioned earlier, is that, you know, we used to think symptomatic and functioning were sort of the same thing, or they were bundled together. We now know that people can be symptomatic and still be functioning and work in school. It may not look like how we would ideally look at that societally, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. And I think that that extends to other social problems that have been related to long-term mental illness, like living in poverty, for example. That doesn't have to be the way that it is for folks who have these diagnoses.
I think this is Nicholas, and I think just the awareness in high schools and just early college classes about what psychosis is, what it might look like. I think that would have helped me, and it will help a lot of other people if they can internalize, like, oh, I'm hearing things, and I learned about this in high school. I better call it my doctor. I mean, that's the ideal thing, for someone to notice it themselves and go in with the knowledge that they've learned prior to having symptoms.
This is Andre, and I also think we need to explore how psychosis is experienced in different cultures and how they make meaning of around that, and so that we can create a comprehensive plan of education, prevention, and integration into the work field.
Anyone else have any last thoughts on that?
I would add to the cognitive retraining interventions have kind of been a popular topic lately, and I think while there's some evidence for that, there's also evidence of doing a task that isn't meaningful or functional doesn't have the same effectiveness in terms of rewiring the brain. So I think figuring out how to combine interventions like that with functional doing, whether that's with occupational therapy or not, to really maximize those effects would be one area.
Great. Okay, folks, I'm just being mindful of the time here. I wanted to especially thank all of our panelists for, A, their contributions to this important issue of Focal Point, and B, for taking the time out today to be with us. And to the audience, thank you. We didn't have a chance to get to everybody's questions, but we do have a way of following up with you, and we will do so as we can via email. We appreciate your patience with us. And also, this webinar will be available as a recording, and we'll have a resource sheet and the slides available to you from the Pathways website. And again, that's pathwaysrtc.pdx.edu, and you just want to go under training, webinars, and look at our previous webinars archive, and you'll actually be able to access the archive that Tamara and Ryan did back in January as well, so that could be informative. All right, and of course, please download Focal Point freely from the link shown on your screen now, and share it with your friends and family. And again, thank you for your participation today. And goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.